Hello, it's Amanda here from Suddenly Autistic, and I'm talking today mostly about this from WTF to gentle acceptance, the undulating journey to myself, which feels a bit icky actually saying because I feel like I'm navel gazing again and focusing on myself, but it is a me vlog. So I guess I better get on with it because that's what I'm doing. And why am I doing this? Because I'd mentioned in an earlier video, probably the one before this, I can't remember, that for the first time in my life, I felt complete. I felt like a whole person. I felt like I was getting somewhere that way, and that I'd integrated my late diagnosis of autism, which I got 3.5 years ago in my late 40s, that everything had started coming together, and I finally felt like a whole person, not a person with autism or blah, blah, blah. Anyway, following on from that, there was a comment about, well, how did you do that? What did you go through? Because I'm recognizing that there's quite a few people listening to what I'm saying, and other people are saying that it's kind of like, this is where I am now and whatever, but not so much understanding how people got there. How I got to be in this position today, where I'm feeling a lot more comfortable today than I was this time last year even, or the year before, or the year before that, or way before diagnosis, is complicated and individual, and I don't know that it will help anybody to know I did this, I did that, I did with the other in a step-by-step form. But what I do think would be helpful is to have a dive into some of the things that I've been doing on my journey, and how and why I did those things, why I prioritized those things, and sometimes the why came after the fact. So in the space where I started doing something and didn't really know why, but it seemed like the right thing for me to do, there were feelings. So I'm going to talk to you through this from WTF to acceptance, this gentle acceptance, through the lens of what getting back in touch with my body, or getting in touch with my body. A lot of this way of thinking about myself being informed by my diagnosis, which are complex PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, ADHD, and autism, of which obviously the autism and the ADHD are things that are with me for life. The other two things are mental illnesses, and I still have those, although they're not affecting me to the degree that they were before. I'm still having moments of those. And you might notice on my neck I have this eczema. Eczema is definitely something that flares up from at different times, and at the moment it's very humid and hot. It's coming into summer, so it's got a lot to do with that. It's also got something to do with the time of my life, and hormonal menopause-y type things, and the hotness of the evening. It's got something to do with my clothes and them scratching me, but it's also got a lot to do with stress. So all of these things sort of play in. So what have I done to get myself integrated and to start to feel like myself? It's been a bit of a process. Let's get into it, because I've already talked for a little while. I've got my computer over here as well, because I can't possibly remember all of this, even though it's my story, because of the strained brain that I have still. And I'm saying still with an emphasis, because I don't know, I felt like I broke my brain towards the end of my tumultuous time of the past. In the last couple of years, I felt like my brain had broken a little bit, and I still feel like it's not completely firing on all cylinders, and that I'm not keeping everything in check. And sometimes I feel like I make these videos. I've made this video, this is about the fourth time I've tried to make it now, because I get to the end of it and think, wow, that was okay, I can publish that, and then I read it back or watch it back, and I just don't, it doesn't, it's like, where were you going with that? It's a lot of rambling. So anyway, there's a lot of that going on. The most important thing I'd say to start off with, how did I get to here feeling more integrated, is, well, I started off feeling very disintegrated as a person, feeling in parts, feeling that I'd been given this autistic part, I'd been given this ADHD part, and that these things really explained a lot to me, and they gave me a lot of hope and a lot of clarity and some closure, and they also gave me a whole new bunch of confusion and lack of understanding and lack of knowledge. I didn't grow up native to this state of understanding myself, and have had to learn what it means to be autistic, what it means to have ADHD. In the absence of those diagnoses, I wasn't not being those things. That is me. But I was applying a different lens to it, and that lens would also often be, I'm chaotic, I'm unpredictable, I'm a bit flaky. Flaky was a big one for me. I'm flaky, you know, I say I'm going to do something, then I can't do it, then I do it, but it's a bit crap because I'm really out of energy, I'm out of juice, I can't really do it. And then I say I'm going to do it and I try to do it, but I've double booked and then I can't. Oh, you know, so I always felt very disorganized, even though to other people I perhaps didn't come across like that. I came across as maybe hyperactive, very busy, definitely someone who couldn't say no. And those highs and that hyper productivity was then interspersed with lots of times of feeling like my whole body had been replaced by a lump of concrete and I couldn't move, and everything was really hard and I didn't know why, and I'd be just so tired or overstimulated. Anyway, so getting the diagnosis really helped. Before that, there was an explanation, and the explanation was I wasn't a great person, or I was a failed person, or I was failing in some areas, or I was chaotic or defective or just not great. You know, there was lots of that. So getting the labels really helped. The generalized anxiety disorder was a complete surprise. I would not have said that I was an anxious person, but since knowing that about myself, it's really helped me, actually. So there is a bit of a thing in this online space talking about mental health, that if you start to identify too strongly with your diagnosis, then you don't get over it. I can see how that's true for people who are looking for a reason, subconsciously or consciously, to not get over something. But for people like myself, who is on a constant quest to not let anything get them down, and who wants to move forward with their life and be expansive and creative and enjoy things and reach their potential, then I'm certainly not looking for an out. What I'm looking for is an explanation and a way of caring for myself and looking after myself a little bit better. So for me, all of these diagnoses created this little sense of myself that I was a lot more vulnerable than I first thought, and that I should treat myself with a lot more care and regard. I should increase the regard I have for myself more so than what I thought. So prior to the diagnosis, I thought that I was somewhat bulletproof, that I was superhuman because I didn't have these pesky things called emotions really affecting me too much. I could just keep going, very strong work ethic. You know, yeah, okay, I'd fall down every now and then, I'd need a bit of time in bed, but in the times when I was productive, I was hyper productive, and I could always, you know, even my ups and downs, my ebbs and flows would even out to be higher than average and pretty good. So that's what happened. Well, it was very early on in the piece that I realised that I was going on a journey that was rather like the book We're Going on a Bear Hunt by Michael Rosen, and it's illustrated by Helen Oxenbury. I don't know whether you've heard of this. It's a story that goes, we can't go over it, we can't go under it, oh no, we've got to go through it, when they're on this hunt and there's an obstacle comes in the way. So that idea of going through it, or that what that actually would look like, that came to me, became obvious at that aha moment, that this is what my life was going to be now. I've got these diagnoses. I've still got this concept of myself and this idea of the world. I am going to keep on having to just get through all these different obstacles, but that each obstacle I faced would need me to recognize it, to learn about it, and to not just steamroller through it like I had in the past, but to really understand the nature of that obstacle, because now I'm vulnerable, and if I just steamroller my way through all these obstacles, I will die. I had this sense that at the start of this journey of trying to integrate all this into myself and get to know myself and own my own narrative for the first time in its entirety and its truth, that I'm going to have to keep going through all these things still. Life isn't going to get easier for me. It's going to still have barriers in the way, but I'm going to have to tackle these straight on, head on, like always, but in a much gentler way. So I'm having to go through it. So I suppose the first takeaway for me to reflecting on my journey to get to where I've got to now, which is where I'm feeling a bit more integrated, is that yes, basically tackling every obstacle that came up in a much more gentle way, with and giving each thing time. So for example, could be something simple like my routine isn't always the same. I mean, I'm an autistic person. I do like routine. I like these things to be the same. I'm not a big fan of change. And at the same time, I have my ADHD side, which is like, oh, novelty, new opportunity. Yeah, let's go. Everything's exciting. So I have these two things inside of me that already make life quite chaotic. But my somatic self, my body, likes to have sort of routine, certainty, and a level of control, because my system is quite vulnerable. And this particularly plays out in terms of digestion. So I like to get up in the morning at a certain time and not be rushed. I like to be able to get up and potter around the garden, have a cup of tea, have another cup of tea, have some breakfast, do some reading or scrolling or whatever. I don't want to have to get up early, get my clothes on and just rush out the door. If I'd have to, I can do that, and sometimes I have to do that because of the nature of life and my work. But when I do that, my system doesn't work and I don't go to the toilet in the morning. I know it's, a lot of people, when you talk about bowel regularity and stuff as simple as that, a lot of people are regular, a lot of people are not. But there's this, we go to the toilet at the same time every day. Well, that's not me. If I have a routine that's suboptimal for me, it's not quite right, I can have my body shut that part of its process down for many days. And of course, when you're having a routine that's a little bit up and down and different, that can really build up in many ways and feel a bit shit, I guess is the way I'd put it. So for me, this concept of can't go over it, can't go under it, oh no, you've got to go through it. Well, if I want to live my life in the way, if I want to continue living the life in the way I am, which now is better for me, then I've got to find a way of getting through that. And the first stage to getting through it is to recognize that boundary, or that barrier that's there, that inconvenience or that symptom or that effect, whatever it is. So in my body, recognizing, putting two and two together. So this sort of disruption to my bowel habits has always been a thing since I've been a kid. I've recognized it as always being a thing. But before, what I'd put it down to is it's just me. It's I've got a delicate stomach, or my stomach's a bit iffy or whatever, but not really understanding that it's when I'm out of a routine. So actually marrying that symptom up with the cause, that I need this morning routine that goes a certain way and that has a level of safety and space and time, that I have no rushes and demands on me, no immediate demands. Recognizing that, and that if I don't get that, then I am going to have problems with my bowels. That's something new for me. That's something new. So with that new, so with the diagnosis, with the slowing down, the taking time, then recognizing that this is a barrier, this is an obstacle, this is something that affects my life in a negative way, and then leaning into that and actually watching it and observing it like a scientist, and then recognizing, aha, this is what causes it. That's what's enabled me to move on. The bowel thing is, I've put it up there because it can cause a problem for a lot of people. It's probably quite relatable, but there's many more. And my usual response, my habituated response to barriers that get in the way of things that are to do with my safety and my emotionality, my typical response prior to integrating myself was to dissociate in one way or another, while battering that through, like battling through. So I would just push on through, and I would dissociate from whatever part of my body or part of my life is causing me pain. So it's not quite the same as sweeping it under the carpet and knowing what it is, but not wanting to look at it or denying it. There wasn't any denial because I didn't really know the extent of the problem. I knew the symptoms, so instead of feeling the symptomology, I would dissociate from my body. That's what I did. Now I'm not doing that because I'm going through it. Hooray! And yes, it has improved my bowel movements. Thank you very much for asking. The other thing that I realised early on in my journey when I got my diagnosis was that our environment plays a huge role in influencing the decisions we make and how we feel, and our sense of wellness. There's that old saying that if you, I don't know what it is, if you feel like you're I actually said that, and now I don't know what the saying is, but it's something like, if you're depressed, make sure you're not surrounded by arseholes or something. There's something like that. Don't go to therapy and spend all that money getting better. Just look around you. What are you surrounded by? Same happened to me. So once I got my diagnosis, and I'm thinking about myself in this different way, and I'm treating myself more vulnerably, because I am more vulnerable than I had a concept of before. I'm looking around at my environment and seeing that there's a lot about my life that I can't actually sustain and stay healthy, and that I wasn't prepared anymore to use my health as, or put my health in the line in order to have these other objective reality things happen. I just was over it. I needed to prioritize myself and my health. I had to move. I had to move and change. Now, moving house, we did. We did that at the beginning of this year, and that has been a huge catalyst to another big shift in my wellness. And I've got better and better this year because a lot of the external sort of stresses and strains on my life came to an end this sort of time last year, and I entered a new phase of being where I'm only working part-time. I'm in a smaller house. We don't have the financial pressures that we had before. That kind of life change, for me to sit here and say that's all you need to do to integrate your new diagnosis, it's ridiculous, because not everybody is going to be able to do that, and indeed we won't be able to keep doing that. So I've done it this time. I'm hoping that's all I need for the rest of my life, in terms of big moving because you can't sustain your old life anymore. Moving just because you want to change or move somewhere else, that's a different story. But yeah, I would say that while I literally did all of that, the literal move wasn't as important. Well, it was. I can't deny it. It played a big part because it got me in a safer position. But important as well is having that change in your mindset. We find ourselves in a bit of a shitstorm, if you like, but we can't get out of it. That was me for the majority of the last 3.5 years since getting diagnosed. In fact, well, 2.5 years, because 1 year of it we've just had, and I've been in a safer place. So, and even before that, I knew that the pressure was getting to me and that it was making me feel very ill and actually get ill. What I did was work with my therapist, and whatever, I tried to stay physically where I was, because that's what I had to do. There was no way out of it at that time, and create safety in other ways, and create a break from my harsh reality in other ways. But ultimately, what made the biggest difference was selling everything up and downsizing. Could I have sustained it in another way? I would have had to make a big shift personally, because at the beginning of this year, I was so mentally strained that my psychiatrist wanted to put me in hospital for a break. I didn't go because I didn't feel like it. I couldn't afford it at the time. It's very expensive to go in because it's a private clinic that I go to. And I didn't really feel like it could do any more for me, and it would put another stress on my, the rest of the family coming down to see me or whatever they were doing, or me not being at home. So I decided to do hospital at home, which basically was just me accepting that I was in a bad way, and not taking anything else on, and having a month off. So I actually, at the beginning of this year, I took about a month, 6 weeks off completely while we were moved, when we were just moved into here, and I focused all my attention on just pulling weeds out of the garden. And well, that helped. That did help. I did damage my fingers because I pulled so many weeds out in my dissociated state that I pulled the tendons in my fingers. They've kind of got better now, but I still can't wear my wedding ring because now my fingers are really fat. So that's kind of a side effect of that. And it just shows you how little attention I pay to my body sometimes. The WTF to gentle acceptance and undulating journey, the first thing is recognizing that we just have to get through this, but actually doing it in a conscious, step by step, slow way, where you're evaluating the hurdles as they come up and seeing how it feels in your body, in how I see how it felt in my body, and then addressing each thing and working out what have I got control over, what haven't I, and working from there. And then the second thing is environment. If I can't change the external environment to make it objectively sort of safer or less stressful, then changing our internal environment by accepting this new reality about ourselves and giving ourselves time and space to rest and digest it is a good idea. Then the next step of it was the reparenting, which this was really essential, because when I was a kid and when I was growing up, nobody knew that I was autistic, had ADHD. People knew I was anxious. I mean, I had a bit of anxiety as a kid and I would get a bit wound up, but back in those 70s and 80s, it was and in my family. So in general, the pop culture wasn't talking about these sort of feelings in this way, and we weren't dealing with things in the way we are now. And in my particular family, probably not as good as some at dealing with emotionality and emotional health and emotional intelligence. So progressive reparenting is recognizing one's vulnerability, being gentle and kind to oneself, allowing for quiet time without having that adult narrative of, oh, you should be busy all the time, you're just being lazy sitting down in the middle of the day, or watching telly, or not making your bed, or whatever it is that goes through your negative self-talk. Have quiet time, sit down, relax, don't have a plan and a to-do list, or to take away 3 nights in a row if that's what you need to do that week. Just do what you can within the means that you have it. It doesn't mean be reckless and then cause another problem or kick the can down the road again. Certainly doesn't mean leaning into a lot of unhealthiness, but it does mean giving yourself a break from that intense adulting headspace. Think about when you're a kid and you want to do, I don't know, play Legos or something, play something like that. You just play it, you just get it out and play it. You're not thinking, oh, I've been doing this now for 3 hours, I really should stop and get up. No, you shouldn't. So just do that. So what I did was learn about, so in my reparenting journey, that's where I did a lot of learning about emotional intelligence and actually learning about emotions, reading children's books about emotions, leaning into my vulnerability. Children are vulnerable. As adults, I was definitely feeling like bulletproof in a lot of ways, or definitely not that gentle. I wouldn't have called myself a gentle or a vulnerable person, but leaning into it really helped. Claiming my own narrative again is really helpful. Like I said, having quiet time, being creative, going out for walks, stimming, playing, having some creativity. So drumming, I've got my drum up there. All of those nice activities that was helping me reparent myself, but mostly giving myself time and space. And I also delegated things. So I used to do a lot of the I still do at times, but I was more in control of the finances of the family, and I delegated that to my husband when I was really ill the beginning of the year, so that I didn't even have to look at the bank account, do any banking at all. I'm not a big spender of money on a day-to-day basis. It didn't stress me to not go shopping and stuff on my own overly, so just buy the food and whatever. And that really helped me to take away some of that big adulting responsibility and actually give myself a break and be more childlike, in as much as I wasn't having my head in that space or interrupted that way. Tackling things as they come up and giving myself space, yes. Reparenting myself and putting myself in a safer, calmer position where I had more time and space. These are really essential, and I think I can't stress enough how 11th hour this was for me. If I wasn't going to change, I would lose my mind. And in fact, my mind was already being lost and going out the window, as was any sense of me being able to function as an adult as a functional adult in the future. So it felt like a need, a desperate need, instead of just a nice thing to do. So prioritizing those really wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. As trying to make this video and kind of failing back and looking at it and going, oh, where am I going? What am I saying? Is this just waffle? I wanted to sort of come up with sort of like a process I went through of my thinking, and there was many. I'm very creative, so I like to use creative tools like journaling. Actually, I didn't do journaling. This is my journal. Collages, so I'd explore emotions through collages, because emotional literacy was a big blind spot for me, and it still is hard. I have the autistic problem with interoception, so sometimes my thoughts and my feeling, like I can't always feel my body in the way that neurotypical people can. So I have a Garmin, for example, which I've had now for 3 years, which has really helped me key into when I'm having a panic attack, because I don't necessarily recognize that in myself and I don't necessarily feel my own heart rate panicking, and then keeping a track on things like sleep and whatnot. It's only now, after having a good 10 months or so of solid progress in a safe place, where I was able to really see myself get better and better and better and more resilient and more integrated in myself. It's only now that I've started to look at things like my diet, exercise, and you could put sleep in there, or my sleep hygiene. But sleep was something that I prioritized early on, because I felt like I was chronically under chronically sleep deprived before, because I'd had a problem with sleeping because of nightmares because of my CPTSD, and nightmares can still come. So one thing I didn't do was go straight to the adulting space of, oh, got to eat healthy, got to sleep 8 hours a day uninterrupted. Going to those sort of adulting spaces of things that you do, like and you've got to exercise 5 times a day, 5 times a week. So when you go to a psychiatrist or any mental health professional, they'll talk about the importance of all these things, just generally looking after yourself. I didn't have the headspace for that at that time, and I'm sure a lot of people who've been mentally ill or who are mentally ill can understand kind of what I'm saying. Yes, we know it helps, and we don't have the headspace for it at that time. The priority for me was resting in a way that was kind of active and just building some resilience back in my brain. So like I said, learning the skills that were missing, recognizing the things that were triggering me or the obstacles that were coming up in my day. Whether I had Cocoa Pops for breakfast, lunch, I don't have Cocoa Pops, but whether I had that for 3 meals a day or not, or my vice was, and still is if I let myself, lollies. So I'd eat loads of sweets or lollies or whatever. I didn't worry about what I was eating too much for the most part, because I'm in that reparenting childlike space. I had a diet like a 5-year-old at a birthday party for a lot of it, and I knew that was doing me harm. It was doing me harm, though, on a slower trajectory than the mental health, which was coming in like a wrecking ball. So the fact that I wasn't eating, all the veg and fruit and whatever, and I was probably putting on a little bit of weight and all the rest of it, I felt like it was a problem for another day. So I didn't dwell on that. Same with sleep, especially initially when I was struggling a lot with nightmares. I didn't worry too much. I just did my best to go to bed when I was tired, which was fairly early, and then to roll with it and just keep trying in a gentle way of getting enough sleep or prioritizing some rest, making the use of being able to go to sleep in the middle of the day whenever I needed to, and not feeling guilty about that, but not worrying if I only had 5 hours some days and 10 hours the next, but definitely not bed rotting either. So a little bit of parenting there, but mostly just letting it go and not being overly anal about that. The same with exercise. Now, my exercise of choice through getting better has been gentle walking. So not getting my heart rate, booming a lot and whatever. So I actually didn't do a lot of aerobic exercise for the last year or so. Well, I have this year started it again, but I've gone from being extremely active in my past, doing mountain bike racing, running, whatever. I've always loved exercise, but the cardio exercise had sort of slid down and down and down as I was caring for family members and being a mum and running a business and being stressed and burnt out. So my exercise was going down and down. I know putting on a bit of weight, feeling a little bit blobby in my body, and not doing a lot of cardio wasn't good for me. And I could also see from going to the doctors that things like my cholesterol were going up and things weren't great. However, again, it's like that's a problem for another day. I'm not going to change that at the moment because I don't have the mental capacity. The mental capacity has to come first. I have to have that first. And it's only been, I think, my husband and I started a healthy eating plan probably now, it might be coming up to 2 months. So the last 2 months we've started looking at a diet together, and we both wanted to lose a couple of kilos and do a little bit more activity. So we wanted to live a healthier life, and it's easier to do it, I find, in the family, and now there's just the two of us. It's really easy for me because we are on the same page with our goals. We sat down and made a meal plan, and the sort of things that we like together. We're not too strict about it. We still have a little bit of chocolate every night, but it's now, you know, dark chocolate and not a whole family bar each, that kind of thing. If there's anything to be taken away from that, and again, I suppose this is all going to be different for everyone. Of course, I knew that working on my physical health and having a better diet would be better for me, but I have a long history of struggling with food, with vegetables and stuff. One of the problems I think of being autistic with vegetables and fruit and veg is not that I don't like them. I don't always like them. I don't prefer them to lollies, of course. That's my favourite thing, really, although I haven't really eaten any for the last 2 months. You get a punnet of say blueberries that I love, and some of them will taste like crap. They're horrible, so you don't know what you're getting, whereas a bag of lollies, you know that each one of them is going to be nice. So there's that anticipatory anxiety that comes with fruit and veg, that you just don't know if it's going to be nice or not, and that can be off-putting. And then there's other things, like for example, I don't know, you fancy mashed potatoes, you've got to peel the potatoes, boil them, put them in the, it takes a lot of effort, and sometimes I don't have the spoons for that, and I don't like instant mash. And I know people would say cook it up when you've got energy, put it in the freezer, even it's too hard. No, food is a problem. It takes a lot of mental bandwidth, and I'm not a foodie. So I knew that that was a hard one for me to tackle, and I needed to tackle it when I had some mental capacity back, is what we did. Then the exercise comes in. So I've been walking consistently throughout this piece. So I've kept a level of fitness, but not really as good as I wanted. So then I brought in something fun, going back to my reparenting, and I brought in my mountain biking again. So I'm using my mountain bike. Again, nothing spectacular, just little rides every, few rides a week, just to get the heart rate up, and that's my exercise. But I'm not stressing. Some weeks I'm just too tired. But what I have been recognizing in the recent past is where I'm tired because my brain is burnt itself out through anxiety, versus when I'm physically tired because I've either done a lot of exercise that I'm recovering from, I didn't sleep very well last night. So there's I'm recognizing now in my body different types of tired, because we didn't go over it, we didn't go under it. Oh no, we went through it. So I've sat with myself and started to learn what it feels like for me to be anxious, what it does to my body when I have a panic attack, how long it takes to get better from that, what is the best thing for me to do. So I've recognized that when I'm anxious, tired, a little bit of exercise is probably a good thing. But when I'm tired, sitting down and just letting myself have an afternoon nap or doing a jigsaw puzzle or something is probably what I need. The last thing, well, I will leave it almost there. The last thing I was going to share was on reflection. When I was trying to put this through this video, I wanted to sort of, sum it up as to what process I was going through. And I would say that integrating my late diagnoses, plural, into my sense of self, so that I don't feel like Amanda plus this, and this, that I just feel like me, has involved going through a process, rather like a grieving process. But I wouldn't necessarily focus on it being it wasn't a grieving that I got these diagnoses. It was a understanding more than anything. And I suppose grief is a bit like that. Grief is reorientating yourself in the world without a person, without your person. So the whole denial piece, the anger, the bargaining, the depression, the acceptance is all part of it. And there has been, and like we know now about grief, these emotional states don't happen linearly. You don't finish one and then progress to the next. They sort of ebb and flow. They come and go. Hence why at the beginning I've said it's an undulating journey. So I would find aspects of my going through it and getting to know myself which would bring up a denial in me. I don't want to know this is too painful. Denial, I want to deny it because I don't want to, I want to live in my toxic hope. I want to live in this hope that things aren't that bad, or this is not always going to be the case. But relinquishing myself of that hope and actually sitting with a reality has ultimately been the best thing. But for some things that I've gone through since getting diagnosed and trying to reimagine myself, it's been very painful and taken time. So all of this, each stage, each thing to go through is its own little universe. The same with things like anger, anger at being so vulnerable for so long and having so few people recognize and help me. many more people take advantage of that, especially that hyperactivity and that energy I had. And I remember people saying to me, oh, you know, you're busy. Oh, but you know what they say, give a job to a busy person and they'll get it done. And I'm like, yeah, but then you're adding to my busyness, and you know I'm stressed and tired, so you just don't care. You just want your thing done because you think I can do it, because I do everything, because I can't say no. That's taking the piss. So all of that went on. So this whole denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance was kind of, on retrospect, when I look back at my journey, I was going through those washing machine processes. Each time I was coming up against an obstacle, and each one of those would send me a little bit further into towards the integration of myself. I had a few artists and people that have joined me and inspired me on my journey, and I've got a little slide about that, but there's more too. So staying creative, staying inspired, reading along the sides. I didn't just go and read, well, what's it like to be autistic books or whatever, or immerse myself in that, because for me, this was a journey to myself. I don't want to be just Amanda who's autistic like anybody. I mean, it's part of me, it's who I am, it's how I operate, but there's a narrative that's unique. I mean, being autistic isn't unique. There's lots of autistic people. Being Amanda is unique. Being me, sorry. So being this person here. So that's where I was trying to go. And so it was really important for me to tap into some creativity and just things that would get me thinking different ways, some relevant, some directly relevant, some not so, but all just fun, relaxing, thought-provoking, seeing the world in a different way, remembering that the world is actually quite a nice place at times, or an interesting place, or an absurd place, whatever it might be. And then the last thing I was going to share was the online community. I'm not a big fan of indulging in wall-to-wall autistic content, although, like, I mean, I'm making these videos and this is a long video and I'm kind of saying I'll watch it and hoping people do, but I think this sort of content is useful in a way. I mean, it's kind of nice to sort of hear what goes on in other people's minds sometimes, especially when we're feeling alone. But I didn't want to wallow in just autism and going, oh, this is what autistic people do. If you're stimming, it's fine, don't worry about it. You know, or 10 of the favourite things of autistic people, or you've got ADHD, this is what you like. I don't need to know that about myself. I find the world a lot more nuanced, and as such, you know, people like the neurodivergent doctor and Dr. Kim Sage, I've enjoyed their content quite a lot and found it quite useful, although I can't watch it all the time because there's more to me than that, and there's also that to learn. So bit of both really. So I've put that up there just in case people like to see whatever. And that's it really. So I won't be dwelling on this subject longer. I'm going to make different videos on different things. I'm not sure what yet, depends on what comes up, but at this stage in my life, I'm getting to the end of 2024, the year that I've turned 50, which has been great. And yeah, life is definitely looking better from here on in, because of all this stuff, because of the time I've taken, and because of the attention that I've paid to the barriers and those yucky feelings that have come up. So hopefully that's sort of given you a bit of insight into what it's been like in the process, and maybe you can adapt it for yourself. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the channel, and I'll keep some content coming your way, probably once a month from here on in.